And we are back after the beat. I'm Luke Thomas, Danny Segura, Brian Campbell, and in the end, Chuck Mindenhall. We have been taking your tweets using the hashtag #TheMMABeat. It is now time to answer them. All right, here we go. No, first one up, no time to waste. Danny, I'll start with you. What do you see as Miesha Tate's impact on it's actually one championship. Right. It was announced that she's going to be the vice president. Knowing in very one championship fashion, they just declared her to be the vice president. Like, of what? It's like saying, I'm a doctor. Yeah. What do you do? Radiology? Are you a surgeon? What do you do? Yeah. What do you make?
Well, from the recent signings that they've had, it looks like they're trying to appeal more to this part of the world, obviously with Eddie Alvarez, Demetrius Johnson. And Miesha Tate, she's a very popular fighter. She's one of the best women, female fighters on this planet. So I think it's part of that. It's trying to bring in that audience and trying to just not focus less on Asia, but just have a more broad reach. And I think Miesha Tate, with her signing and making her VP, that's what they're trying to achieve, and that's the type of audience they're trying to bring in. Plus, she's doing a lot of media now. She works in media.
She works with me at SiriusXM. Yeah. She did the commentary for Quintet.
She's done some Fox.
She's done some Fox stuff as well.
So they have now a voice here in the U.S. in that big market. So
although I think it would require her to move to Singapore. I think she has to move there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a decent power move for PR purposes to put a face. But I think the next step is North American TV deal of some kind. You want to lap PFL or WSOF or whatever and get into that core. You got some faces now.
She trained with Matt Hume as well.
I think she started out in the Seattle area.
I mean, it just seems like in some ways Matt Hume is just kind of populating.
He's a quiet power player,
isn't he? Man. That's kind of the way I looked at it. I was like, wow, look at Matt Hume just kind of putting his people in places of power, and good for her. I guess we'll see how it plays out because I really don't know. It's hard to predict.
Look, I've got to know Miesha a little bit from SiriusXM. She's bright, super hardworking. Remember, she was doing some managerial stuff as well.
That's right.
Again, I don't know exactly what she'll be doing because they didn't tell us, but I bet she's up for the challenge big time. So
yeah, I agree with that.
All right, next. Okay, Brian Campbell. What is the best bad fight you've ever seen? For me, it's Emmanuel Yarborough versus Daiju Takase for its sheer level of awful, hilarious #TheMMABeat. Now, the obvious answer is always going to be Dada versus Kimbo.
Yep. Yeah.
Do you have a choice beyond that one?
You mean first one's to hard stop lose? I mean, that's just, talking about a last man standing match.
Brian Campbell is a brutal analyst.
I love sloppy fights. There's so many sloppy fights. Can I get a minute to rank my top 5?
Any in boxing that stand out to you?
Yeah, all of them that are sloppy. Are we talking about fights where guys shouldn't have been in there together, where it's more of the Bellator level match?
You get to define it. How about that?
I don't really know if I have one. This is not good live TV. I'm sorry. I just, I like them extra sloppy. Chuck, you got any that jump out at you?
First of all, when Screech did the celebrity boxing thing, that was awesome.
Well, if we're going to that level, I don't know if we're thinking of those type of, because there's a lot of those celebrity things which are pretty bad. But if you look at, what was the Nate Quarry one, obviously, where it was like the running man.
Nate Quarry and...
Of course, that ended up being fun in its own way, too. Yeah, Nate Quarry.
Caleb Starnes.
Right, exactly, yes.
Where he did this bit.
Yeah. He made it, it was pathetic, but it was also kind of funny at the same time. So that one always springs to mind when I'm thinking of these types of things. That Ngannou fight, man, the one that just happened, I think it's just because of the expectations, but it couldn't have been a 180, a complete opposite of what you're expecting in that fight. So therefore, it seems to me a mortifyingly bad fight. You know what I mean? Where you look at it back on it, how does that ever happen?
They want to know what fights we love, though. It's all early UFC. Who doesn't love putting on the early UFC and seeing these?
Where are you guys on the Japanese use of the giants? So Giant Silva and then the Hungman Choi.
Jose Canseco.
Jose Canseco. Yeah.
See, if you want to break it, it's how do you break it into the novelty ones like that? I don't know.
Yeah. The Don Fry one is insane.
Yeah.
The Don Fry versus...
I never get the guy.
You mean the gentleman whose ear got ripped off?
Where they just punched.
Takayama.
They had the hockey fight. They had the hockey fight for 5 minutes until the other guy dropped.
Is that a sloppy fight though? And that's not a bad fight. That's an awesome fight.
Well, it's insanely sloppy in all the great ways, though. What are you going to saying? They had great technique holding the back of the other guy's head. It was as sloppy as you could. You could
imagine. But that's not a bad fight. It's not a bad fight. Is just what is this ridiculousness?
All right, so they want to know our guilty pleasure favorite bad fight. All right.
It's hard to think, man. If you just go on YouTube and just watch any of the Kimbo Slice's street fights in Miami, those were all sloppy, man.
I saw
those
one.
are fun to watch.
I think we should answer this question after the Liddell-Tito fight because we may have a new leader in this category.
I went to a regional fight once where the facility didn't have air condition, and they had one of those canvases that was covered in ads. Like the whole thing was just a giant ad. And so 1 minute into the fight, these guys are all sweating. It was like, you ever seen those Japanese game shows where they try to get the people to climb to the top of the stairs and the stairs are completely greased? It was like trying to fight on one of those surfaces. They had to stop the fight in between rounds and get someone to towel it off. And I was like, I don't know what this does to the fight. I don't even know if that's legal, but probably a good idea to do that. I've seen stuff like that. Craziness.
Wow.
Yeah. And then, of course, Kimbo Dada was...
That's a tough one. There are, I mean, you could come up with a bunch if you really wanted to think about this question.
It's mostly at the regional or like Japanese level where they just accommodate that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But UFC is kind of hard to think of. But the Caleb Starnes, Nate Corey one.
Bob Sapp fights in Japan.
Oh, Bob Sapp just gets punched once and he turns into Sergio Ramos.
Well, no, before he actually did that, he was a tough guy, man. He would take a lot of hits.
fight's amazing.
He fought in a kickboxing, but I think it was the Korean Giant.
Hong Man Choi?
Yeah, I think so. In kickboxing, that was a fantastic fight. It was sloppy.
He fought Hoost as well.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Bam
That was a
Bam
good
Bigelow.
Oh, when Chemo took his heart and soul. Bam Bam was on drugs.
Bam Bam,
money,
Bam Bam.
reportedly,
Wait, what happened?
Bam Bam Bigelow was an old pro wrestler who tried his hand in an MMA fight. And
What happened?
Chemo took him right down, sat on his face, and just punched the crap.
Yeah, it was
out
really
of him.
sad.
It was
Really?
a brutal
It was a
ground
sad
and pound,
thing.
absolutely brutal, sad. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. If
You're
you
like,
start
sounds awesome. What are you
start
talking
going through
about?
the annals of all that stuff, you could probably come up with about 100 of these.
All right, next. Chuck, who has the best chance of being the next Oceanic champion out of Volkanovski, who's got a fight coming up against, who did they announce him this week?
Chad Mendes.
Chad Mendes.
Oh, that's a tough one,
Tuivasa, and then, of course, Israel Adesanya, who just had about the performance of a lifetime on Saturday.
I'll tell you what, man. I know everybody's high on Israel Adesanya right now as well. They should be, but all of those cats, I think, could be. Like, I think all of those guys have a chance to do it. But I will still go with Israel because I think watching him, like, this was the escalation moment for him. Like, he's in a big spot, Madison Square Garden. There's just so many weird mental factors. There's scrutiny all over this fight. People want to see if he can show up, and he pulls that off against Derek Brunson, who was trying to tear us up. And it looked a little weird there for a minute, too. It looked like Brunson was going to use his size and his strength a little bit to make it a little uglier. And instead, he just gets styled on. And, I mean, once it happened, you could see Adesanya slow the fight down in his mind. And every time I see somebody do that, like, instead of pouncing like a person who can't wait and is just going to blow his wad that quickly, you see him calculate and just all of a sudden it becomes surgical and precise. Yeah. When I saw that, I was like, that dude is going to be a future champion. So I'm not going to go against him.
No, there's one answer. And anybody that didn't watch the interview with him and you on Monday should watch it to just get a piece of that the personality and the brain matches the amazing style and technique. And, I had a chance to interview him at Media Day last week. And I try in these moments when somebody is the next shiny toy, and I've gotten my heart broken, as we all have in MMA or boxing or whatever, where you get behind a guy, but he doesn't really have it. I tried to press him in my interview with him, kind of push him a little, see what I got. He's the real. He's the real. He's 3 steps ahead on everything he says, certainly in what he talked to you and how he breaks down these fights. He's 2 or 3 moves ahead, but I mean, as he told me, I spit bars, and he's just creative, and he's it. He's the one guy.
Yep, I agree with these guys. Adesanya has to be the guy on that list. Tuivasa is doing well, but he had a really close fight with Andrei Arlovski. He still has a bit left to prove. I feel like with Adesanya, is like, he proved and over-delivered. We're like, whoa, so how good can this guy be? But somebody I would like to add to the list, Dan Hooker. I think he's got a solid shot.
Yeah, he's good, too.
He's very good. He's young. He's developing. And he's also good on the mic, and he has the whole package.
Yep. Volkanovski doesn't. Pat Wyman, formerly of Heavy Hands podcast and a lot of other places, he loves Volkanovski. I do too. I believe that Volkanovski is probably a title contender. I'm not saying he can't be more than that, but I just need to see more to be sure. But Israel Adesanya, as you mentioned, you spent 5 minutes talking to that guy, and you realized, you said it on Saturday, he's not bluffing. And I've never seen a guy just do everything you're supposed to do correctly. Like, I mentioned before, there's a lot of fighters who don't like doing media. He just does it. There's a lot of guys who don't understand the opportunity when the mic gets put in front of him after a fight and, Joe Rogan's talking to him. He gets it. Going to the press conference, he gets it. training the right way, doing all the things you need to do to get better. He gets it. Like everything you're supposed to do, he
There's a
just kind of
sinister
gets.
edge underneath him. And I don't mean like he's doing bad things behind the scenes. I'm saying there's like that sinister gruff that you need to be a destroyer. And you see him in the cage. He's playing with his food. I mean, he's setting guys up in ways, not going with full power shots, really just trying to stretch things out to prove points. I mean, he's a sick dude.
You ever seen a big cat get fed? Like at a zoo? They'll throw like a giant piece of meat, and you'll see the cat. It'll go and like touch it like this, like that, and you think, "Oh, cute little kitty playing with it." And then once it begins to bite and tear into it, just shreds it to pieces.
Seems like an app comparison. I can see that.
By the way, could you imagine him and Jacare as a final test before a title shot?
I love that
That's
fight.
deep end of the pool. That'd be fantastic.
I love that fight.
Love that they're
Anderson
talking.
Silva.
No one wants to see the Anderson Silva fight.
I want to see it. I know there's people that want to see it.
Donks.
Just because we don't agree.
Look, I have to be slanderous and unfair. That's
right.
my bit.
Yeah.
All right, next.
That's fair.
That's who I am. All right. What were your reactions to Sharice David's victory for Kansas's 3rd Congressional District? This, of course, was the former female MMA fighter. She won in true red territory, I believe. Native American. I believe she is lesbian and former MMA fighter. Yeah. I don't know anything about her race. What I mean by that is the congressional race. I don't know what she ran on or anything like that, but I have to say the thing I took away from it was, sometimes you begin to think that the MMA community is so narrow in its diversity, and maybe some ways that it is, but fighting attracts a weird cross-section of people.
Yeah.
And it just tells you that there are all kinds of people in this community. Mark Wayne Mullen is already in Congress. He fought MMA. He's on the other ideological side of the spectrum. He's a true red Republican and from Oklahoma. And yet here we have this common denominator. It's kind of interesting. Yeah. Do you guys have any takeaways about that?
It's a cool little victory for MMA, and you read her backstory and her qualifications. Like, this is an impressive individual, an Ivy Leaguer. I mean, so it's kind of one of the. It reminds me of those times around '06 where UFC would be like, "You don't understand, this isn't boxing. Our guys are college educated. Yeah. Chuck Liddell has an accounting degree," and it's like those were like forced in your face. These are one of those where it's like, "Oh, that's good to see for MMA."
Yeah. I thought it was cool, like, because you see people like Charles Pierce talking about it, and all of a sudden he's talking about MMA. We should kick your ass. I love when people like that, the cross intersection, when people who would not talk about MMA or even deign to acknowledge it. Find themselves talking about it in a familiar way.
And it made her cooler. They were like, not only is she the first Native American woman in Congress, but she'll beat your ass. She's an MMA fighter. And they kind of presented it as like a kind of thing. Like a Rosie the Riveter.
Yeah, I would say, it's like a small victory, especially like in MMA where, a lot of these fighters are, especially after their career, they're attached to bad headlines, whether it's, DUI or, domestic violence and all kinds of things.
Man.
You got somebody out there doing something positive, and that represents the MMA community, so it's cool.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. By the way, did you guys see the body cam footage on the Stephan Bonner thing?
Oh, wow.
Dude, man, I mean, he needs help. He needs some help.
That was crazy.
I've done some ill-advised things with alcohol.
Pre-Facebook, yeah.
But I've never done that. That's just a whole new level of...
Picked the wrong set of guys. And that was somebody
what
said
was
on
that
I don't know what that was about.
So people said he said that, but I played that clip over and over again. I am 99% certain that's not him.
No, it's not him.
It's the other people. It was the citizen arrest.
It was the citizen arrest, that's why it was so puzzling. You're like,
TMZ was like, he said that. I'm like, I don't think he did. I don't think he could move his vocal cords. He was so out of it.
Exactly.
All right, next. All right, who wants this one? Is Dan Miragliotta slowly turning into Mario Mazzagatti?
Whoa, that's like a
didn't want to called the KO. We got some conjugation issues from Reyes against OSP, and now made huge mistake against Weidman with a horrible stoppage. Who wants that one? All right, I'll go first. Here's the thing I try to make a point about, and I think the referees get bitter at me, but it's like you have to call the stoppage bad for what it is. So, for example, in the CB Dalloway fight against the Russian gentleman whose name I've forgotten now, where Herb was doing it, it was a bad stoppage by Herb. I mean, there's just no other way to call it. It was really, really bad. Here's the thing that I don't think fans understand. It's not that you need to be accommodating of bad. You have to call it out for what it is and do the best you can to correct it. And if someone is habitually really dangerous, like a John Shorley, then they don't need to be behind, or rather inside that cage. On the other hand, like, have you been to regional MMA fights and seen their refs? Like, Herb Dean is what it looks like to be a good referee.
Yeah.
Dan Miragliotta is what it looks like to have a good referee. It's like, it's not quite Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, but it's like Kirk Cousins, he just throws picks. I mean, that's just what it is. Like you're not going to get this kind of like totally, they never really, make bad errors. They're going to make really bad ones. That's just what it means to be good. It's that hard to do.
You're a human being, you're using your best judgment in a situation, and you're using your best eye. Because these guys have been doing it. The guys we're talking about have been doing it forever. But in that specific instance, when Weidman went down, from where I was sitting, I could not see that he was out. Like TV people saw that right away. It just looked like he went down. That's all that I could see. So when he wasn't, the only thing that gave me a tip-off was that Jacare was kind of like, hey, I'd prefer not to keep punching him, that sort of thing. So I was like, what is going on here? So when Miragliotta, that might have been the part where he could have looked maybe at Chris Weidman like, hey, man, is he, and made that split decision. The fact that he took those hammer fists, I don't know how many of them landed. I didn't really go back and watch that part of it, but like they took those hammer fists, that made it look that much more egregious to me. But it's so tough, man. All of these guys, like, the inexplicable one was Herb Dean, like something like that, where there's just no return fire. You're almost like, what is he waiting for? You're trying to understand what's going through his mind. Yeah. But in something like this, man, if he doesn't see his eyes rolling back in the back of his head, he may just think he's knocked down. And I
just thought the way Weidman fell was really bad.
Yeah,
when he fall like a mannequin, like a Terry Edom.
And also, for those who have wrestled, when you're going for a low single, you can't just go soft. You got to go all out. And Weidman was just kind of hanging on there, and that tells you that he's not fully there.
Yeah.
So we're humans, man. People make mistakes, and it's not like soccer where you see an offsides if the player's past the defensive line. It's an easy call. A lot of the MMA
they still get that wrong, but I know what you mean.
It's subjective,
Yeah.
So it is a tough job, but like back to the Herb Dean example, he was refereeing the Adesanya Brunson fight, right?
Who?
Herb Dean.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was a fantastic stoppage.
He did a great job.
And that was a fantastic stoppage. You see Brunson just taking enough damage, and you could have let that fight go on, but as soon as it got stopped, you see Brunson's face, and he's not complaining about a bad stoppage, and you go, man, that was a perfect stoppage.
I pointed this out before. Referees are like offensive linemen in football. Like, the only time you hear their name really is when something went wrong.
Yeah.
If they're doing their job, you don't even know who was reffing that fight. You know what I mean?
Or when they get arrested for weed.
Yeah.
Hey, he's back now.
Good to see.
And that's all. Didn't California pass full legalization?
He's one of the better refs.
I know,
Yeah, he is.
Josh Rosenthal?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was truly one of the better
Lester
refs.
Carwin, there's his number one.
By the way, the last thing about Herb, I do think he did an excellent job in the Brunson fight, which makes, to your point, like, how did he miss that one in the CB Dalloway where the guy's just showing him his back and covering up and you're just letting it go? He did it one other time that stands out, and it actually involves Chris Weidman. It was the Rockhold fight.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I really wonder what kind of damage Chris Weidman took from that and how much that has affected him.
Well, I mean, now he's on 4 or 5 fights since. He's not ever. This was the closest he came to, I thought, to looking like himself.
He looked good in the Romero fight. People don't remember that because he got viciously KO'd, but he won those first 2 rounds pretty cleanly in my judgment.
Okay.
I mean, look at the Gastelum fight.
Yeah, and then he got dropped, but then he came back. But if you go back and watch the Rockhold fight, man, that was a solid minute where you were like, this could have been called off.
Yeah.
Anyway, food for thought, I suppose. All right, next. Who wants this one? Do you believe the WMMA 145 division, I'll go to Brian on this one because he was hating earlier, has more value, financial and otherwise, than the men's 125 division? Why or why not, Brian Campbell?
No, it does not have more value. It has equal or lesser value. There's no one there unless you want to blow up some faded 135s. And look, I mean, I'd be okay if like a Kat Zingano got blown up and given a title chance, but that seems to be the only people available to get title chances. There's no one in that division. I get why you created it. Cyborg has had a run. I don't know what you would then do if you canceled the divisions. You just drop Cyborg or only put her in catchweight fights for people that want to see it. Just look, if you're not even going to commit and put rankings up there and you're going to continuously put her, although I obviously love the Nunez, if you're going to continuously put her against people that we've never heard of, then it's just, drop the damn division.
Let me play devil's advocate. Name a flyweight fight that ever did better business than Holm versus Cyborg.
Well, okay, that's a one-off though. I mean,
Is that a one-off?
Holmes still had the Rousey rub. I mean, it's still a.
Here's my point. I think generally flyweight offers you more value, but the upper bound limit has already been proven to show you at women's featherweight that it's higher.
I mean, it kind of comes down to also like what defines value. Like, do you need?
Good point. Yep.
Do you need fights to fill out cards? Because women's featherweight is not really there. It's non-existent. So it's worthless as far as that. But if you're looking for headliners, I mean, Cyborg is a drawish.
I was going to say that's really what it comes down to, right? You have Cyborg, which is the whole reason for the creation of that division, but she is compelling enough where people know who she is and they will pay to see her
She's
fight.
got a highlight reel, man.
Which I'm not sure you could make the case for anybody on the men's flyweight division.
Currently, anyway.
Yeah.
She doesn't need a featherweight belt. She almost needs like an old school UFC super fight championship where it's just like, if you fight Cyborg, you have a chance to beat the greatest woman of all time.
any way
and be
you
the new
want.
pound for pound #1. So yeah, open weight division. Here we go.
By the way, if they ever find a way to make that Kayla Harrison Cyborg
That
fight,
would be something, right?
telling you, bro. Telling
Yeah.
you. That's going to be ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, next.
It'd be fun.
Chuck, this one's for you. You can only listen to one album the rest of your life. What is it? And don't give me this, is it a country album? Is it a rock album?
Is it a
Is it
rap
an album
album?
with 10 songs?
What
or 8
genre are
songs?
we talking about?
Answer the question.
So,
And it can't be a greatest hits. It's got to be a studio album, okay?
No, it could be any album you could go and purchase.
there's a couple good ones. Replacements, Let It Be
Yes.
would be
yes.
right up there. I'd say, you could say
Boy,
the
we
White
have-
Album.
We have wildly different tastes.
Well, I mean, I love it.
White Album's good. White Album's good.
But see, this is where it's always hard because I could go down each genre.
yeah, but I'm not asking you to rank them. I just want
know.
yours. There's no wrong answer.
Those, I would say those are right up there, man, where I really love the albums. There's, I'll start with those two.
Yeah, Abbey Road by the Beatles, Exile on Main Street, The Stones. How about Blonde on Blonde by Dylan? Can I go wrong there?
I'll throw out there Chicano Adman's first album, which you guys have probably never heard of.
Yes.
I can listen to that thing for days. Not get, the key here
Pantera.
is getting an album that you can't get tired of.
Yeah.
Because if that's
Yes.
the only one you can listen to. So it's not really the one you like the most, but the one you can listen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not making a claim it's the best album, just the one that I can just leave on rotation. Easily got to be Vulgar Display of Power.
I got it. I said it. I said Pantera.
And then, well, in that category, 40 Ounces to Freedom by Sublime could just be on a list.
It's another real.
But I
you
will
know what? That's
say,
a good
But
sneaky
see,
call.
if I'm in that genre, I agree with you. If I'm just over on that side, I'm thinking like, okay, I can pick one from this genre. I'm going to pick that one as well. I love
Oh,
that.
10 from Pearl Jam is probably really the answer in all the categories. Sorry. Besides Drowning Pool or whatever you just said.
Drowning Pool.
Why? Like, here's what I understand. My taste in metal is impeccable, and then you bring up like new metal, garbage pail kid nonsense
Sorry, I meant POD. Sorry.
that I would never associate myself with. You act like I'm just like the cousin of Limp Bizkit or something.
I love that sweatshirt.
Yeah, why don't you go to a Dixie Chicks concert, loser?
Wow,
Yeah,
wow.
that's right. Dying Fetus. How about that? Well, we're on them. I could do Descendant to Depravity.
Yeah.
I could do
What a week for the studio. Adesanya said the C word about 15 times, and now that.
Dying Fetus. I could do Reign Supreme. I could do Wrong One to Fuck With. I could do a lot of those. They're all pretty good. Yeah,
That's a pretty good one.
they're good albums.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you know what? You didn't. I thought you were going to have much more consternation about this. You let me down.
Well,
I thought you'd be like, "What do you mean? What kind of movie?"
I thought I would actually say something.
No hip hop across
can't
the
win.
board.
Even when I try to trick you, I can't win. I think we have one more. Okay, a question for the entire panel. Yeah, I believe this is the last one. What was it that turned you towards MMA media as a profession? If you could cover any other sport, what would your ideal choice be? Let's start with the first one. Who wants to go on this one? What was it that turned you towards MMA media as a profession?
Well, for me, it was pretty simple. I grew up reading, fight game chronicling that was really well done. I mean, and so you thought like this is an endless fighting in general has so many angles. It almost never exhausts itself. There are always going to be things to talk about in a literal fight. So I read that stuff growing up. I loved all sports, but I think I was turned on mostly by the writers of the old boxing days. And I thought, as MMA evolved, I thought, hey, you know something? Because I was in different forms of media before I got into MMA, but there was just a point where I was like, I don't really see voices in MMA. So at some point you're like, maybe I would like to be the voice of, or try to be a voice in MMA and kind of talk about it the way the Mailers and the Plimptons and the Lieblings and those guys did back with boxing in the day. So for me, it was more like that.
Yeah, I got an illegal cable box right around UFC 2 and was able to have parties at my house and watch all the way through till it got banned.
How old are you?
40. I'm a man. Look, come at me. But my point on that is that I've always been a boxing guy. I became a boxing editor and writer at ESPN, and then I had the chance to become the MMA editor and work on with great guys like Josh Gross, Brett Okamoto, Chad Dundas, Chuck Mindenhall.
I was going to say, do you remember
Franklin McNeil and
I forgot you guys used to work together.
Yeah.
oh yeah, and and it was
Chuck is there not
it was an
easy.
easy crossover to add that.
Danny?
For me, I always loved media, and then I was just a huge MMA fan.
social
And then-
media?
Of course, yeah. Only Twitter, Facebook, yeah. But I've always loved making like little videos, and in high school I was in a film class and whatnot. And then I was just happened to be a huge MMA fan, and something that attracted me to work in MMA media was like, I love soccer, but if you look at like those soccer press conferences or interviews with these players, they're so boring. They say the same thing. They're always just so upbeat. Yep, we lost the game, but next one we're gonna, With MMA, it's like you get so many interesting stories and there's so many stories to tell. And that's what I love. Like you talk to any fighter and everybody has a very distinct story, and they're very open. There's still not that PR barrier there that that stops you from getting to know them and telling their story. So that's what really attracted me.
I'll tell you, my story is and I mean this sincerely, is failure. I've had successes in my life in a variety of different personal and professional capacities, but most were pretty unremarkable.
Shaving.
No, I mean, seriously, like things you could do well in academically, I did pretty good. Things you could do well personally, I did pretty good. But there was nothing that ever really stuck out. And then I always had an obsession with the martial arts, and I decided to, start my own little blog. And then I got picked up to run Bloody Elbow before it was anything. Like, it was just a domain name, essentially. And it just took off. Like, it was a success. And it was the first time in my life that I was ever like really good at something, and I loved it at the same time. So I said, well, I like it and it's going well. Let's just see how far we can push it. And here we are, these many years later, and still doing it.
I do believe to this day, and I appreciate this component, that MMA is kind of like that place where the disenfranchised can warm their hands around, and so many people who came from other walks of life that weren't fitting in or whatever, they can come into this world and somehow find a spot for them. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like that is I feel like the media formed in a very similar way that you're talking about. I feel like the media was a collective of people who came from other areas that just found their way here. There's very few people, maybe now there's another generation coming up behind that grew up wanting to be MMA media, but I feel like...
He's saying it was started by rejects, essentially?
Kind of.
No, well, the thing is...
Even the fighters themselves,
I had a good job before I got into MMA, but I hated it. I hated everything about it. I was so stressed at that job. It's a true story. All my fingernails fell out. And I went to the doctor and I was like, do I have AIDS or something? And they did a bunch of tests. They're like, no, do you have stress? And he was like, yeah. I do have stress. And it was just terrible for me. And that's when that's exactly when I got pulled into Bloody Elbow. And then month over month, the traffic went like that. And I could not believe that finally a plant grew in the garden. All my plants, always metaphorically speaking, died. Not that one. That one grew. So I just pushed it.
By the way, I'm still in love with the illegal feeling. That's why I love the UFC 25. I want to see bring it back to past. I love that gross illegal feeling. My black box, I was watching UFC pay-per-views. I also got the Spice Channel, so I love that gross feeling on there. You know?
There's also, it's still an anti-PC pursuit. I think that is a big deal for me.
Still.
I was always like that. So it's like, there was a sport that was thriving as an underground thing that people were preserving. They were getting mad if you weren't protecting its taboo nature, which I appreciated.
And then the other question was, and we'll end it right here, if there was another sport you could cover, what would it be? Danny, you want to go first?
I'd do soccer.
Yeah.
Soccer.
In what capacity? How would you like to cover soccer? There's a lot of different ways you can.
Yeah. Just analysis, breakdown of there's this SB Nation podcast, Los Colchoneros. It's dedicated to Atletico Madrid, who is on top right now.
Is this in the Enter the Calderon? Or
Into the Calderon. I guess they should change it now into the Wanda. But,
yeah, whatever.
So they basically just get together and talk about what's going on within the team and the latest news and everything, and they just tackle. And occasionally they do interviews with soccer players, but analysis would be big for me. Yeah.
I'd do the NBA. That's my non-fighting.
Yeah, is that right?
Insane.
Who's your team?
Love. Celtics.
Yeah, you would love them.
I would.
Captain White America over there.
How dare you?
How about Jamal Murray hanging 48 on the Celtics? I'm a Nuggets guy. But I'd probably be, basketball I really like too.
Yeah?
I think I could write about basketball. Right? But I do find it to be kind of, again, Fight Game offers such a broad spectrum of things you can jump into, whereas I find NBA to be finite. The storylines, even though The Ringer has like 20 voices for the NBA and one guy writing about combat sports, I still find it to be the opposite. I'd probably take that, but I think I could do baseball or I could do anyone, but I could do baseball as well.
Baseball's dead.
No, but see, that's why you take that.
Only I have an interesting answer relative to the conventionality of you three. I would cover strength sports. I think strongman can blow up in this country with guys like Thor from the Game of Thrones, Brian Shaw, 4-time world's strongest man. They promote that sport so poorly, but it's just, you want to talk about crazy stories to tell? Oh my God, these guys. And by the way, they purposely don't drug test, so these guys are all just juiced to the tits. It's incredible. I love that. The World Championships in weightlifting are happening right now, which is an Olympic sport. Lady Solis from Colombia took bronze. There's amazing, amazing athletes in that one. Powerlifting is totally not unregulated. They have sanctioned and non-sanctioned federations, but it's this Wild West. And all of these sports have virtually no media covering them. But then when you talk to their athletes, they're all self-promoters. They all have YouTube channels, and they all have hundreds of thousands and millions of followers. It's this completely underground world that is very interesting, very much uncovered. And if I didn't do MMA, I would be a part of that for sure.
Also, I would like to add, I know it's still combat sports, but jiu-jitsu is getting very interesting.
It is, yeah.
For a while, the coverage was just, I mean, there wasn't much to cover. Now, with all the events outside of like the major ones, all the pay-per-view events, it's getting pretty interesting. And the personalities too, it's getting more MMA.
Gordon Ryan, Gordon Ryan's by the way, Kasai Grappling going up against Felipe Pena, which is a big rematch from the last ADCC. I actually think of all the flow verticals, I think flow grappling is probably the most comprehensively good. To be I mean, flow combat, they're out there doing their thing, but flow grappling is like that's like the industry leader insofar as I can tell. So.